So Neon Cotton is a Japanese company, and it has been there established on 7th of August 1951. We are, as you can see in the map, we are present all over the world with our subsidiaries, and we have more than 200 distributors, which are present in more than 200 countries all over the world. And the business activity major, we are into medical equipments, where we are development, manufacturing, and a sale of medical electronic devices. We are one of the top manufacturers in the world, and we have more than 5,000 employees world over and present in our subsidiaries. Now, a small overview about the leading the evaluation of medical engineering. I'll not go through it. Starting 1951, where we have developed the first EEG machine, which is powered by AC, because that time battery was not a long life batteries, and we had a unique thing like this, where in EEG power conditions was used to be bad, and it was the first machine which was developed with a AC power. And then after that is a complete history, which you can go to the website whenever you find a time. And the remarkable thing which all of us are using is the pulse oximetry, which was developed by Neon Cotton scientists, Dr. Aogi, and one Dr. Kishi, who was a Neon Cotton engineer, using the red infrared light absorption pulsating components. And Dr. Aogi has been awarded IEEE award also, and he has been recognized by the WHO also for his development. Unfortunately, we have lost him this year during this COVID time, and this was the biggest invention done by the Neon Cotton, and which is in the history, because any critical care cannot be completed without SpO2. So we all respect him for his development to the world, and which has been continuous. And after that, we have so many things which I'm not going to detail. I'll just take 2 more minutes regarding talking about the quality, because Japan means quality, and the specialty about Neon Cotton is that we make our own PCBs, and in our factory we follow the strict quality controls, where you can see in the pictures a lot of inspections of the PCBs, and that is why the quality of Neon Cotton is most respected in the industry, one of the most respected industry. And another thing what we follow is a cell manufacturing system, where one person manufactures the complete product, and the name of person who manufactured it comes, that you can see in the right bottom corner, though it is written in Japanese, but whenever we enter any number and we give a feedback about any breakdown, that goes to the quality control of factory, and the further improvisation has been done according to those feedbacks, and the person is also trained further if any breakdown happen of a particular person. So this is what we have been known for that years. And there's a complete range what has been offered by Neon Cotton. We have a complete monitoring system, right from basic to the advanced parameters, which includes your EEG included in the patient monitors, where we have all high-end parameters, which is right from OT to all the places. We have a telemetries. Then in a hematology segment, we have a cell counters, 3-part and 5-part. Then we are there in a cardiology and resuscitation market with a defibrillator, AD, and ECGs. And we are very strong presence. We have a very strong presence in neurology, where we have a EEG systems, which goes from 32 channel and up to 256 channel with high sampling rates. The EP and EMG systems, which goes up to 12 channel system, and one of the most respected EMG system in the world. And recently we have launched a headgear, which is an EEG system, EEG headgear, which will be talked in further sessions. And the latest introduction by Neon Cotton is a ventilator, which we have introduced last year. So we have a complete set for that, complete care areas in the pre-hospital, emergency rooms, operating rooms, ICUs, NICUs, all type of ICUs, and the ward things. And it's coupled with your central stations and all the related technologies. Now, this is the unique technologies what has been given by Nihon Cotton to the medical industry, which is in the ECG front. If you see, we have something called synthesized 18 lead ECG, where from the standard 12 lead we derive the 18 lead, and then we have arrhythmia analysis. Very advanced arrhythmia analysis are there. And as you know, we are the inventor of SP2 technology. We have very unique SP2 technologies available with us, and the different type of transducers which are very unique to the industry also, which are, some of them are very unique to Nihon Cotton only. And we have another unique technology which was launched in 2012. It's called non-invasive continuous cardiac output, which is a cardiac output thing estimated, and which is done totally non-invasive. You don't need to put any catheter, you don't need to use anything. It is by the current parameters which are used in the routine monitoring for ECG, SpO2, NIBP, or invasive blood pressure, NIBP. IBP. Then we have launched another new technology, is called iNIBP, intelligent NIBP, which is very fast compared to the conventional method. This is can take the NIBP in half the time compared to the conventional NIBP methods. Then we have a EtCO2, which is a mainstream EtCO2, and just a 4 gram EtCO2 sensor, which can be used for non-intubated patients also. And the first in the industry which can be used for non-intubated patient, a mainstream sensor. And then we have very unique CO2 mask also there, which we will be covering in the next sessions, subsequent sessions, when we are going to talk about the CO2 technologies. So this is the training sessions which are going to be used in next 6 months. Today we are going to talk about resuscitation, and 26th of November we are going to have, 27th of November we will have defibrillations basics. Then the advanced course of defibrillation will be going to happen on 4th of December. The ECG on 11 December. Also oximeter, SP2 technology we are going to talk about 18 December. Non-invasive blood pressure, capnography, supplies and accessories, and healthcare IT also we are going to cover. And quiz, and then finally we have the quiz and question answer and certification. So we request all of you to please attend all the 10 sessions, to having your proper certification. Now the objective of this program is a knowledge sharing, and where we want to increase the knowledge and enhance whatever technologies with the help of Force Biomedical. Knowledge sharing, because when we discuss with Naresh, so we discuss about these agendas, how we are going to benefit the biomedical fraternity to all of you. Then your skill upgradation, how to do, because all the sessions will be taken by the industry leaders like Manzoor San is there, Manzoor Bhai is there. Then industry networking, of course, which will happen. So I hand over to this further to Mr. Hemang Mehta, who's a dynamic. No, there's some technical issue with the Hemang. So I'll just go over to Manzoor Ahmed, Mr. Manzoor Ahmed, who is currently associated with Manipal Hospitals. And he's a senior manager purchase right now. But I know him for years when he was working as a biomedical engineer, and he was a head for biomedical in Apollo Group, and he was there with 19 years. He comes with a vast experience of biomedical engineering. So it's over to Manzoor Bhai.
Thanks, Anil. So first of all, I would like to congratulate Nihon Cotton and Force Biomed to organize this event. And I would like to congratulate all the participants. And I hope that they complete and they get the certificate at the end of the session. At the end of the program, in fact, the total 10 days program. Or 6 months, as he rightly said. So coming back to the biomedical engineering pathways, biomedical engineering by the term has a very wider meaning. It encompasses the clinical engineering, rehabilitation, biomechanics, bioinformatics, genetic engineering, so on and so forth. So it will be appropriate if we call a clinical engineer where they can support the hospital staff, because the main focus of an hospital is to deliver a patient care. As you are aware that the technology management is not the core business of the hospital. They generally outsource this business to the third-party vendor, like TBS, Faber, and many other companies. You might have heard TriMedics and all. So the front end of the hospital, where whoever delivers the patient care are the medics and the paramedics, then these people are equipped with the diagnostic tools, monitoring and tracking tools, and the therapy and surgical tools, where the biomedical clinical engineer has a very larger role to play. Nowadays, the healthcare is totally technology driven. The clinical engineer has got a larger role to play here. So it is in collaboration with the clinician and the paramedics. They have to deliver to the patient expectation whenever they get admitted in the hospital. For a clinical engineer to have a basic minimum qualification is the bachelor degree or a diploma in any of the engineering branches with a considerable knowledge in biology and engineering, where they can understand the clinical need and they can give the engineering solution for that. Different countries have different qualification criteria. For example, if somebody wants to practice clinical engineering in US, they need to have an additional qualification called CCE or a fundamentals of engineering. They have to clear these 2 exams. Now, when come to the biomedical, if you have to establish the biomedical department in a hospital, the general structure, it is like a manager, a supervisor, and an engineer and a technician. Generally, it is a thumb rule. What we follow is for 80 beds, we can have 1 engineer sufficient. But the engineer should have a good knowledge on biology and engineering, and he should be able to give all the engineering solutions to the requirement of the clinician or the paramedics. So the main aim of the clinical engineering department, which has to be established in a hospital, is to build a progressive, safe, efficient, effective program delivery of equipment maintenance, and they have to be positively and they have to involve themselves in the technology selection, acquisition, and receiving the equipment, and they have to install and commissioning. So a good biomedical engineering department should have well-established job responsibility, and they should have a clear pathways how they are going to deliver the expectation of the hospital. Whenever there is a clinical requirement, whenever there is a clinician who needs a medical equipment, they will contact with the management, and the management in turn will designate a biomedical department or a clinical engineering department to interact with the doctor to get to know the requirement. And it has to be documented, and it has to be shared with the management with the proper technology comparison, whatever we have in the market. Once that particular acquisition has been approved by the management, then the biomedical or clinical department has to provide the site for the installation of medical equipment. Particularly when we talk about the radiology, radiation equipment like linear accelerator, MRI, CT scan, and other things, we need to interact with the project department, and we have to provide all the inputs from the manufacturer to the project department to establish or to provide the pre-installation requisites. And also we have to get the regulatory approvals from the proper department before we go for the acquisition of the radiation equipment, which is mandatory in some of the countries. Like in India, we need to have AERB approvals. And for ultrasound equipment acquisition, we need to have PCPNDT approvals. Once we get the approvals, and once we get the equipment, and we have to coordinate with the project team as well as with the service provider to get the machine installed and commissioned. Once the machine is commissioned, it has to be tagged and it has to be tracked also, where we need to have a proper inventory in the form of an Excel sheet, or we can have a technology management software. And once the particular machine has been installed and commissioned, we need to provide the training to the user as well as to the in-house biomedical engineer to do first level management. And that particular training is very much necessary to have the optimal utilization of the technology, whatever has been purchased. And the next thing is that we need to have a maintenance program also to have the particular machine, whatever has been acquired, to function for its full lifetime. Like, we need to have a well-established, documented maintenance program, which includes the daily inspection of medical equipment, and we need to have a proper regular testing of medical equipment, preventive maintenance, calibration program, and safety test is very important for any of the medical equipment, be it a physical safety or an electrical safety test. And we need to have a corrective maintenance program also whenever there is a equipment breakdown. And all these activities by the biomedical engineer has to be documented in a well-defined format. And whenever the data is required, it should be easily accessible, and it should be very informative, and which will help in the future technology upgrade or the future technology upgradation. And the basic maintenance program, what we design, it can be modulated based on the site requirement or the country regulation, and it should match with the country regulations. In India, we have NABH and NABL. We should comply with it. Or some of the hospitals in India as well as in abroad, they have JACO or JCI accreditation. Also, it should be in accordance with the rules and regulation laid by the agencies. And the most important thing when we commission any of the medical equipment is that it should comply with all the NFPA 70 or 90, where we need to have the fire safety protection, that is very mandatory. And all the electrical components of the equipment should have UL, where electrical safety is being taken care of. Once the machine has been installed and is being used for ages, now we have to look for the replacement or upgradation basis the clinical need, basis the life expectancy of the equipment, basis the availability of the new technology, or if there is any obsolescence of the existing technology, or so on and so forth. There are some quality parameters which will also help us in identifying the equipment is fit for the replacement. Like, when we look at the equipment, we have to look at the life cycle cost, what is the acquisition cost, what is the age, and what is the expense we are going to incur to manage the equipment for the next 2 to 3 years, or up to the full life cycle, whatever is being defined by the manufacturer. Or there is another quality parameter which will also give us the indication is mean time to failure or mean time between failure. This also gives a good indication that that particular technology, whatever we have acquired, has lived its life, or there are life is still left. And there is another parameter which is very important to monitor when we are a clinical engineer is the equipment recall. Equipment recall is being announced by US FDA, and once we get this kind of an information either from the company or from the US FDA, we have to immediately take an action by putting up like MDT or MDR, that is medical device tracking or medical device recall. Medical device tracking is where the manufacturer will give, that will not be a class 1 recall, it's a class 2 recall, and class 1 recall will go for a medical device recall. And next is that we have to look at the program should be, whatever we have devised as a biomedical equipment maintenance, it should be progressive, where we need to have a quality control program where we can input, we have to track the performance of the equipment, and every time we have to look at the improved performance of the equipment by our technical input. So this is what I have regarding the setting up of a biomedical department. And the current situation in the country is such that the hospital is getting consolidated, where the opportunities for the biomedical engineer is quite optimal. So this is what I would like. This is what I have the knowledge share with you guys. So over to the Nihon Corden team. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Thank you, Mr. Manjoor. Thank you for giving insight of biomedical working of biomedical department and various the key responsibilities of biomedical engineer in the hospital. So we will do the Q&A session later on after the last 10 minutes. So after the cardiopulmonary session talk. So thank you so much. So please. Okay, so thank you so much. We will do a Q&A later on. For Mr. Hemang session, we would like to say apologize for the session. He is facing some technical issue, so he is not able to speak on the his industrial talk. So we are continuing in the cardiopulmonary resuscitation topic. In the chat box, I'm looking at some messages are coming that some network issue is there. I think we have checked from our side. There is no network issue. I think there is some network issue from your side. So in the chat, we are receiving some messages about the network issue. I think it's working fine, right? So let's move to the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I hope you can see your screen. Thank you. Thank you, Sujita. Thank you. Okay. So why we have chosen this topic? See, we need to see the background, and the agenda is there. We cover background. We will talk about CPR. We will talk about the CPR protocol, the response time, and the equipment use. So this is the agenda for this session. And why we have chosen this topic is reason being, we are all from the medical device industry, and you will also in the medical industry. So as a medical person, or even the layman also should know the CPR, and even sudden cardiac arrest can happen to any person anytime, right? So it's very important to know about the CPR, and as a medical profession, we should know about what is CPR and what are the devices which can help the person to recover from the sudden cardiac arrest. Okay, so if you see sudden cardiac arrest, it's a very common disease and common problem these days, and most of the sudden cardiac arrest are happen out of the hospital, and 50%, if you see, 50% of SCA happen out of the hospital condition. And there are some, you must have heard about the blue code. So those are some sudden cardiac arrest in the the hospital. So if you see, even annually 3 lakh people die, more than 3 lakh people die due to sudden cardiac arrest in US, and in India it's more than 6 lakhs. And it depends on the country. And there is a lot of deaths are happening because of the cardiac arrest. So, and doing sudden cardiac arrest is very important, to give the urgent defibrillation. And if you see from this slide, in a minute, in each minute, 10% of the survival rate from sudden cardiac arrest goes down by 10%. Okay, so chance of survival is reduced by 10% each minute. So it's very important to give the defibrillation, right? So it's very important to give the shock by AED, or if a patient is in the hospital or EMS is nearby or ambulance is nearby, you should give a shock by defibrillation. So this is the reason we have chosen this topic. So we are covering in our subsequent session, we are covering about the defibrillation. So we should know where the defibrillator are used. Okay. Now, if patient has sudden cardiac arrest, and if you see there is chain of survival is there. This is OHCA stand for out of hospital. Okay, cardiac arrest. So there is a process of reviving the patient from a sudden cardiac arrest. First, you need to recognize and activation of emergency response system. We need to call for help. We need to call for the ambulance to prevent cardiac arrest. Then you need to start the immediate CPR. Okay. Then we need to give a rapid defibrillation to the patient to restart the heart, and the patient has to move via EMS, via ambulance to the hospital. Then hospital, when patient arrives to the emergency department, then patient may go to the cath lab or ICU. So it's a chain of survival for the patient from out of hospital to the in hospital, right? So what are the factors which cause sudden cardiac arrest? Sudden cardiac arrest may happen, because of cardiac arrhythmias. It may happen because of heart attack, early history of heart attack, or it may happen because of hyperglycemia or hyperkemia because of some electrolyte imbalance in the body, or it can happen to any person who may appear healthy, have no history of heart attack, and no risk factor of SCA. It may happen to that person also. So what happens in sudden cardiac arrest? The normal heart rhythm, the ECG, the patient normal ECG goes to the ventricular fibrillation. Okay, so normal heart, beats in a PQRST, so normal heart rhythm is there. So when the patient is in the VF, so there is no heart rhythm, so arrhythmic condition, or you can say patient heart is just shivering. So during sudden cardiac arrest, okay, heart suddenly and unexpectedly stops pumping the blood. So it's just shivering, it's just shivering, skivering. So it's not pumping out of the blood. So this can lead to the cause of the blood circulation. So blood circulation has stopped. So because of blood circulation has stopped, oxygen supply to brain and other vital organs has gets stopped. Due to lack of oxygen in the brain, patient may go to the hypoxia, cerebral tissues may get die, and patient may lead to the unconsciousness. So, and subsequently, patient may have abnormal or absent breathing. So this condition, it should be recovered by CPR and the defibrillation. And if the patient is not treated on time, it can lead to patient's death. Okay, so it's very important to give the defibrillation shock to the patient. And meanwhile, defibrillation is not there, then you need to give the shock by by the time by giving the patient cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So CPR, we need to continue the CPR till the time patient is not being given the shock. So what is CPR? CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This emergency procedure to create artificial circulation by manually pumping blood to the heart. Our heart is just beneath the sternum, so we need to push the sternum by your palms. Right here, you can see on the picture. So here we need to push, and there is a protocol how to push, and the guidelines are there. I'll tell you later on. So by this, if you are pushing the sternum, we can maintain the partial flow of oxygenated blood to the brain. The oxygenated blood which is there in the patient heart, it can move to the brain. So brain should not die. If the oxygenated blood is not going to the other body organs, that is not you can skip that thing. But it's very important to give the oxygenated blood continuously to the brain. The brain tissue should not die, should not get hypoxic. It's very important to continue the CPR. Okay? But CPR cannot restore the normal heart function. Remember, the defibrillation is always required. So why defibrillation is required? Actually, in this condition, I told you that patient heart goes to the ventricular fibrillation. Okay, and while defibrillation, we give electrical shock. It's a high current DC shock we give to the patient. So if VF is not recovered, through time it can lead to the asystole, and we can give a shock by AED or the defibrillator from the patient is in the hospital. We attach two pads over here, one sternum we call it, and this pad is called apex. So we attach two pads and give a shock to the patient. Okay. So by giving the shock to the patient heart goes to the normal heart. So this is the function of the defibrillator. Now, now if you see someone collapses in front of you or near to you, so what you will do is the AHA has defined some protocols where 5 steps are there. So if you see someone collapses in front of you, first you need to check the patient response by tapping on the patient's shoulder. You need to call him or her that how are you, what was happened to you. You need to call him, you tap strongly on the patient's shoulder. If the patient is not responding, then call for the help. Call someone who is nearby, and call the ambulance. Ask for AED if it is nearby. Okay. Then start giving the checking the patient breathing. So you can check the breathing by if you are looking at a patient thoracic cage, if it is moving or not, or you can see patient is giving the abnormal breathing. If patient breathing is not there, then immediately start the CPR. Okay. So there is a ratio is there. You need to give the 30 times chest compression and 2 times rescue breath you need to give. At last, you need to give a shock by the AED. So the 5 steps are there in the follow CPR. First, check the response, call for help. Third, check the breathing. Fourth, start doing the CPR in the ratio of 30 chest compression and 2 breaths, and then shock by the AED. So there is the process of giving chest compression. You need to push hard and push fast. The depth, as per the new guidelines of AHA 2015, it says the depth should be 5 to 6 centimeter. It is up to 2 inches down. You need to push. Okay, so 5 to 6 times, and the rate should be very fast. It should be 100 to 120 times in a minute. And it's and once you are giving the chest compression, you need to make sure that you release the pressure on the chest after each compression. You need to recoil, the chest compression so that heart gets refilled with the blood, and you give the efficient CPR to the patient. So while giving the chest CPR, you need to lean down at the patient victim side. You make sure patient is lying on the horizontal patient or on the floor, and give the CPR by the patient victim side, and give the pressure by the palm. So this is the case of the adult patient. You need to push faster with more pressure with 2 hands to give the pressure. In the case of child with the age is up to 1 to 8, so you need to give the compression by single hand. In the case of a birth to age to less than patient fat is there or age is less than 1 kg, 1 year, you need to give the CPR by using 2 fingers. Okay? And you need to take the help from the, if you are alone, you need to call someone else to repeat the CPR and repeat the sessions. You can call the ambulance. So in India, the ambulance number is 108 or 102. So with the CPR, you need to give the breathing also. So there is a way to give the patient breath. what you need to do, the patient is, when the patient is unconscious, when the victim is unconscious, every muscle gets loose. Also the tongue, patient tongues also, get loose, it falls back. So it blocks the airway. So you need to take the patient neck with your middle finger, okay, and you need to open the patient airway. You can see the pictures from here. You can see we need to open the patient airway, we will take a little bit and give the breath to the patient. So you need to give 2 breaths, rescue breaths to the patient. Okay. You can use various guided devices is available. In hospital. You can use the mask for giving the you can use the ambu bag, or you can use this guided devices for giving the blood to the patient. So this is a ratio of giving the chest compression breathing. You need to give the 30 chest compression, 2 inches down, and in the rate of 100 to 120 per minute. Faster per minute. So until when we can continue with CPR? Till we need to continue CPR till the AED arrives or defibrillator arrives to your vicinity, or ambulance arrives, or a trained person or paramedic takes over the CPR. As I told you, it's very important for giving the early defibrillation. With every 1 minute, the chance of survival gets down by 10%. So it's very important to give the early shock to the patient. You must have seen the AED in airports, in the malls, or in a railway station. It's a public access device. It's out of the hospital device to give the shock to the patient in emergency. Then here you can see the manual defibrillator, which is used in hospital condition, and in some patient there is a frequent, when a patient goes to ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia. So in those type of patient, implantable type defibrillator is placed inside the patient body. So what is AED? So it's a portable electronic device that automatically analyzes patient heart rhythm and instructs the user. It has a voice prompt. It gives the instruction to the user whether to give the shock or whether to not to give the shock to the patient. Okay, so it's a design. So design is in a way that any layman can use the device with a little training. Or the patient is not, layman is not trained. The voice prompt is there. The hospital can guide the layman to give the shock to the patient. So these devices are installed in airport, railway station, shopping, malls, everywhere. You can and then you can find this AED. So it's an example of the AED installed in Japan railway station. So while giving the shock to the patient, you need to make sure some instructions are there. You make sure that you should attach the pads on the patient victim's bare chest. Okay. You need to the patient's chest should not be wet. It should be to wipe the victim's chest with a towel, or there should not be some fluid or any water on the patient's chest. If patient has a already pacemaker is there in the patient body, so you can see the lump over here. So attach the pads 3 centimeters away from the pacemaker lump. Also, if the patient has a air chest, to do the air chest, you can do. Then very important and very vital thing that do not touch the patient while analyzing the heart rhythm. And the will say analyzing heart rhythm, you should not touch the patient, and when there is a time to deliver a shock, you should not touch the patient, otherwise you can also get a shock. So these are some instructions you need to follow. Other very important point is that once you have given the shock to the patient and patient has revived from the sudden cardiac arrest, so you need to make sure patient make the patient lie on the side till the EMS or rescuers they arrive on the site. So thank you everyone. If you have any questions, so you can put on the chat box. So we will So it's time for the Q&A. So we have seen some questions are coming over the chat box. Uh, if you have questions, you please write on the chat box. We'll answer your questions. Okay, so there is a question from Mr. Gokula Krishan. He's saying how to make a career in manufacturing sector in biomedical company. So I would like to Mr. Manzoor to answer this question. See, for manufacturing sector, okay, I think Mr. Manzoor is not. Okay, so there is a question from Mr. Swastik Bharat. So he's saying, has ultrasound being employed in non-invasive cardiac output monitoring? Yes, Mr. Swastik, non-invasive with ultrasound with echocardiography, you can measure, you can monitor the patient non-invasive continuous, non-invasive cardiac output. Okay, but it's intermittent, it's not a continuous. So the technology which we have is ESECO, that is a continuous, non-invasive continuous cardiac output that you can have from the ECG and SpO2. So with ultrasound, you can, yes, you can measure the non-invasive cardiac output. Yes, you can. If you guys have some questions, please write down on the chat box. Will you provide the recording of the session to participants from Mr. Prasad? So yes, you will get from Mr.
There will be a YouTube recording available on this on the YouTube channel.
Force Biomedical.
You can go on to the Force Biomedical channel and look for it over there. We won't be sending it out individually to every participant.
So the next question is from the A. Kritika. So do we have to register for each session separately? Yes, you may have to register for each session separately. So you will get the links by the post from the Force Biomedical group. You will get the link to register. Also, you will get the link by from our WebEx Messenger side also for the next sessions. Question from within how much minutes the patient needs CPR? See, we need to continue the CPR till the time we give the shock to the patient, or patient starts, they get revived on its own. But it's it's a miracle happen, patient get revived automatically. So you need to continue to do the CPR till you give the shock to the patient.
the question on how much pressure is to be given by the hands during CPR, it is not the pressure, it is how many times do you compress, what depth you compress, and how far you release the cage. So a time of 100 plus compressions in a minute, 55 mm depth of compression, and complete release of the chest cage are more important.
So it's 2 inches down, you need to press, okay? And 100 to 120 times in a minute. This should be the rate of patient.
AED, question is AED is monophasic or biphasic? I'll let Param answer that.
So AED are mostly biphasic. So these days earlier the defibrillators are coming as monophasic also. But monophasic is an outdated technology for defibrillation. Now most of the AEDs and defibrillators are coming up with the biphasic technology only. What is implantable defibrillator? See, implantable defibrillator, as the word says, implantable. It gets implanted into the patient body. Okay, so some patient they may have risk of ventricular fibrillation, frequent ventricular fibrillation. So in those type of patient, so implantable defibrillator all get installed. So whenever a patient has a ventricular fibrillation, that implantable defibrillator automatically gives a shock to the patient heart. So the electrodes are attached to the surgically, it goes down to the patient ventricle cardiac muscles attached to the pericardium, and there it can give automatic shock to the patient. We continuously measure analyze the patient ECG. Next is compression rate. The compression rate is the two things are there. 100 to 120 times in a minute you need to do the shock. Compression rate should be there, and compression should be given in the ratio 30:2. 30 chest compression, and then you need to give it 2 breaths to the patient.
So to the question of maintenance of AEDs, guys, thank you for your presence today. Today we had the company director, external speaker, and resuscitation as one of the topics. We will share with you on screen the next 9 sessions, and we are definitely going to cover those. Can you put up the schedule for the 9 or 10 remaining balance sessions? So you will definitely know what we are covering. Today was a warm-up session to just get you, aligned to what all is coming in store. If you see over here, there is a complete breakdown of what we will do. Session number 2 would be on defibrillation basics. Number 3 would be on advanced defibrillation. We have another speaker coming in for defibrillation on 27th. He is another head of biomedical engineering from one of the leading hospitals. We will have then ECG electrocardiogram on 11th December. And then the last session this year is on pulse oximeter. We take a quick break as per request from Naresh, and we come back to you in the first week of January. Stop by for a break for Onam. Go to 15th January session, and we have supplies and accessories, healthcare IT trends, and a quick quiz followed by Q&A and certifications. So this is the overall scheme of things for you guys, and every session is broken into 2 parts. So there will be a 2A and a 2B. 2A would be about the concept, 2B would be about troubleshooting. Yes, so that would answer a lot of questions I see on the maintenance of AED, defibrillator, and so on. So don't panic. There are specific sessions for those on 27th and 4th, 27th November and 4th December. We will address those every day. 30 minutes for concept. Sorry, 25 minutes for concept, 25 minutes for practical, and 10 minutes of taking questions as they come. So If you have more questions, can you start putting them in the chat screen if we have not addressed anything? Let's see. What is the current value? Tell me about the maintenance.
Can you please explain the principle of what?
How can you get to know pacemaker is there or not? Go ahead.
See, you can see by the pacemaker there is a lump over the patient's chest on the patient's skin. So you can feel it by touching on the that skin part. It will be very hard. Okay. So you can check by looking at the patient's chest. Okay, so there is a question. Can you just elaborate how the AED works? See, AED, it's an automated, external defibrillator. So it works. You just need to tie the patient, like towards the patient's chest, and by the pads, it analyzes the patient heart rhythm. So if the patient is a normal heart rhythm is there, then the voice prompts are there in the AED. It will guide you to not to give the shock to the patient. If the shock is needed, the AED means that patient analyzes the patient heart rhythm is a arrhythmic, is a ventricular fibrillation is there, then it will guide you to give the shock. Okay? So there's a shock button over the AED. So you just need to press the AED shock. So flashing type of button, it's a glowing button. You just need to press that button. So this is how the AED works. And there is a key. If the patient is adult, there is a key. You can change from that button the key to the child. You can change the mode, adult mode or child mode. You can change.
I see Naresh Nikuri has joined in. Just a moment, Naresh, we'll let you address the group. Let's go through the Q&A quickly. What we will do is we will take out the answers to several questions which have come up, and we'll post them onto this group somehow. In the interest of time, and I know there are more than 900 people on this group, we will come back to you with answers for several questions which have come up. Unfortunately, we run out of time. I'll let Naresh address the group, and then we bring this session to a soft closure and be prepared for next week, which is defibrillation basics. Go ahead, Naresh. Welcome to the group. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, sir, for this organizing this session. This session will be definitely helpful to our engineers. I just joined 10 minutes back. Yeah. Hopefully, our engineers will get benefit from this session. Thank you so much.
So, gentlemen, it's nice of you, Naresh, to join in and listen in. Thank you for providing the opportunity and your platform to reach out to a significant large number of people. I just want to ask one last question. Were there any difficulties in registering for this event? You can write on the chat box what you felt. When you got the email invite, was it very difficult to register?
No, sir.
Okay. I see a few no sirs. I see about 900 plus still on the charts. So thank you so much. I think we will come back to you on defibrillator basics. We will also have an industry session on how you go about selecting a solid defibrillator for your hospital or whatever purpose you need that for. So again, thank you to Manju, thank you to Anil San, thank you to Varun San. We will meet again 5 p.m. next Friday on the same platform. You will receive fresh invitations. Click login and register, and we will get in more into what is hardcore biomedical engineering interest. And thank you so much. Have a nice weekend, please.
Thank you, Nihon Cordon team. Thank you, Naresh, for inviting us.
Thank you, Mr. Madhur. Thank you, everyone, for looking and listening for the sessions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Is there a light here?